Oh my god. We did know that Tailwolves was going to be at Gamescom this year, but we didn't know what they would release. They said it would be something different to what we've seen in the past at E3 and things like that, but we didn't quite know the exact specifics of what they were going to release. But it has been confirmed we have some new gameplay, but hold it. This is not single player gameplay. This is not the stuff we have seen before. This is full on multiplayer gameplay for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. So let's get straight into the video. So of course they were showing the new captain mode that we haven't actually seen in Mount & Blade before. This is a completely new multiplayer game mode that was slightly being hinted towards with the last update for native where they brought out a new multiplayer game mode. It's not the same as that, but it does have its similarities in the points where you do have a companion with it. But in this, it's more on a larger scale than that. So what is it? From what we can see from the gameplay, it looks to be a 5-on-5 team-based game. But within this, you each pick a class, and you have, of course, your men that come with it. You get a squad, and it looks like with the infantry and things, there seem to be about 14-15 guys. Cavalry, a little bit less. There look to be like 9-8 men in your squad there, but you have your squad that you command around the battlefield. Now, you have a choice of 3 types of men, of course. You have infantry, ranged, and cavalry. And within these, there are subclasses. For example, we can see Clansman, Axeman, Folksman, and Ulfhednar for the infantry class of this certain faction. I think this is Britannia, but don't hold me to that one. And each within these subclasses, they all have their own unique weapons and skills. And of course, you can also pick a bonus at the bottom of the page, where we have things like shield splitter axes, which of course make your axes more penetrable on shields, so you're going to be able to smash through the enemy a bit quicker, especially those with more armored shields and things like that. And of course things like the normal better armor for your men, or adding mauls, which I would suggest are probably better against more heavily armored units, but of course you kind of want a more sharper stick if you're going up against the lighter armors. But mauls are good for whacking heavily armored men on the face. Now, in the range, there are things like the hunters and the Fian, and the hunter has a short bow and the Fian of course has a long bow. Now of course these each have their individual skills, advantages and disadvantages, and these are going to be things like we can see from the stats on the side. Of course the short bow is a bit quicker firing, but of course it doesn't have the range of the long bow, but the long bow is like, you know, it doesn't fire as quickly. But each individual weapon is going to have a certain advantage and disadvantage, so you're going to kind of have to go and pick which one is going to be best for you. Now, of course, there is cavalry as well, and on here we have the choice between equites and cataphracts, which I would suggest cataphracts are probably the more heavily armored, but equites, you're going to be able to get around the battlefield a little bit quicker, do more damage in certain places, more flanking maneuvers and things like that. And of course, you have more skills, different ones to the infantry and archers. With the archers, you also had some like barrage type things, faster firing and all that good stuff. But with the cavalry, there are things like extra troops, so you get a few more there, because cavalry, there is a lot less in your squad than infantry, but there's also things like better charges and all the things you can expect from that. I think this is an extremely good way of doing it. They are trying to evolve not just the single player of the game, but the multiplayer as well, to try and fill the hopes of all their fan base. This is absolutely great, and I think a captain mode is a brilliant way of doing it, since it does give a good mix between single player and multiplayer, and that might bring people in that maybe only wanted to check out the single player or only want to check out the multiplayer. It might kind of bridge that gap between these two worlds, and I think this is going to be an extremely exciting one to play. So let's get into the game, and what can we tell from the gameplay, what's happening, and is there anything new that we have spotted? So like I said, it seems to be a bit of a mix between the single and multiplayer of Mount & Blade, where you command your squad around the battlefield. Here you can either work on your own, do your own thing, but it looks like the suggested way of playing it is working with your teammates. Maybe if there's class limits, like you can only have a certain amount of cavalry, a certain amount of infantry and archers, that's probably the way they're going to do it, or on servers you're going to be able to choose how many play in each squad. Then you're going to have to work with your teammates, and maybe the best cavalryman can pick the equites, or the best infantrymen can pick the shield bearers, and things like that. And then you're going to have to work with how you do it. So you can put a shield wall at the front, you get men with the archers behind, get your cavalry on those flanking maneuvers. So working with your team is going to be a big part of this game mode. It's not just you and your squad. Now I do see some similarities. I know many of you might not have played this game, but it's a great free-to-play game called Tiger Knight Empire War. Now of course they're completely different in terms of time eras, but there are some similarities in here in terms of the captain mode gameplay. I just spotted that, and Tiger Knight is such a great game, but I think Mount & Blade is going to do it a ton better since they have the resources, they have the physical capabilities of doing a much better job. And if you kind of want to know what this game mode does look like, I definitely recommend you guys going and checking out Tiger Knight. Of course, that's not sponsored. It just looked a little bit like Tiger Knight, so I thought I might add that in there if you guys want to go and check out what it is. So it looks like the maps we're showing is a cool type of village here. We have some buildings, of course. These seem to be, maybe are going to be replicated on the world map, but of course, because it is multiplayer, maybe they're just going to be standalone ones. What I can't wait is to see what the community can do with these buildings. Can you make your own maps? Hopefully there's going to be a more in-depth map creator here, because you could do it in Warband, but it was kind of with different files. You had to do it on your own. There wasn't an inbuilt one into the game. So hopefully with Bannerlord, they're going to be able to add that in as well. I think this is going to be great for competitive matchmaking, because we did have the Battle of Bucharest where we had the team versus team games and the 1v1s, but these are all players. Maybe it's going to add for some more better dynamics if we can get those actual human players fighting against each other, but of course 5v5 humans with AI companions as well. That's going to be a brilliant way, and I think that's going to make for some really cool competitive games as well. Now it looks like you need to take the flags, and the bar at the top of the screen shows who has the advantage of the battle, a bit like it did in the Total War games, where the team with the most men and the guys that seem to be winning, of course, have more colour on the bar. So that's going to be a good gauge, and there seems to be some sort of map there. You can see your teammates, but you can also see the enemies, which I don't know about, because that's going to kind of hinder and limit the type of stealth kind of, I don't mean stealth gameplay, but you know, flanking around the sides, getting where they can't see you. Is that going to be showing up the whole time where the enemies are? I don't know, because that could kind of limit some of the gameplay somewhat. Of course, once again, armor and animations look fantastic as always. Tailwars have really nailed this with Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. I just love the way the armor glints in the sun. Each person has slight individual changes on the way they look, not just their armor but their facial features as well. The animations flow so well. You can tell by the impacts of arrows, people stumbling back, screams coming from every which way, blood flying everywhere. It looks brilliant. And of course, the arrows sticking in the shield, slightly going through at some points depending if you've got a stronger shield or not, and of course bouncing off armor if it doesn't quite penetrate. Tailwars have done a brilliant job with the animations, armor and texturing of all their models, and it's going to be extremely impressive seeing how many people we can push on. That's another point actually. If we've got a server with this captain mode on, will we be able to change how many AI you're on the field at the same point? I would suggest we might be able to. Of course, the more AI on there is going to be trickier to run, but it looks like this is going to be an extremely fun game mode to play with your mates, having like 20, 30, 40, even 50 AI on each squad. It can get absolutely insane, and I really hope they give us the capabilities to do that. Since they're giving us the capabilities to work with more mods, I think they're trying to give the players more free reign, so that could definitely be a possibility of what we see. AI does seem to be a little bit more competent. They seem to be more responsive to the player. They're moving well with the orders, and of course we do have all the orders that we've seen before in past gameplay. You can also see with the archers, I don't know if this is just luck, but it looks like the archers, as they're firing, they're kind of moving to the sides, advancing a little bit, so they're not standing still and they're not as vulnerable to opposing missile fire. So that just shows that the AI has been improved on quite a bit, and I'm very glad that they've done that. Now this is one last thing that I think is really awesome, that I think a lot of people might not have noticed, that me looking at it, I thought I'd add this in because it's been a question on many people's minds. And this is, how optimized is it? Will I need to buy a new computer to be able to play Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, or will I be okay at the moment? And the reason I bring this in is from a little bit of a slip from Tailwars, I think. I don't think they meant to add it in, but it's great that they did, because we get to see how well it's running. We can see in the top right corner of one of the clips, you can see the FPS counter and sort of the computer, workings. The FPS counter is showing in the thick of battle, so that's a good sign. Of course, there isn't as many as there will be in single player, but of course, single player is always more optimized since they know how that's going to work. They don't need to program servers as it goes on. So, of course, single player is going to be more optimized, but in the thick of battle on the multiplayer, we can see it's hovering around 60 to 80 FPS, and that is great. I suggest this is probably going to be on high to ultra settings. It looks very, very nice, but there There is also some apparent bottlenecking in the CPU according to the gameplay, but that does show the game is not necessarily completely intensive on your GPU. It looks like it might be some CPU intensive as well, which is normally the case when you have a lot of individual models in the game at once. A bit like the Total War games, because it's rendering so many models, the CPU is what does most of the calculations. If you're calculating all the models to do certain animations, it's going to be very CPU intensive. That is something that is a bit of a possibility with Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, so I'd watch out for that. Make sure you've got your CPU up to date, but like we've seen before, you don't need very high specs to run this game. But it looks like optimization, of course this is an early version of the game, but it looks like optimization is on point and is looking very good. Seems like most people are going to be able to run this absolutely fine. But what do you think about this gameplay? I've literally watched it through twice, so of course there are some things I've missed. If we get together enough things, I'm going to watch it through a few more times, going to take bits out, and if I've got enough to bring more out to you guys, make sure you stay tuned for another video on that soon. But I can't wait to see what other news we can find for Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord at Gamescom this year. And yes, they have said that there isn't going to be a release date, but I'm sure we're going to be able to find some more things to keep us going until then. But make sure you subscribe to see all the Bannerlord news as soon as it comes out. But until then guys, I will see you in the next one.